Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, I'm trying to make this video not too long. Lately in my videos, if you've noticed, I've been kind of waxing philosophical and pretty much, kind of going off on some tangents, trying to figure out how to explain what kind of games I like or my game experience. Not really what kind of games I like, but the game experience that I prefer. So I'm gonna try to define it a little bit better because I was talking to Runeslinger today, really brief interaction. Beginning of my day, end of his again. And just mentioned the fact that sometimes I think I'm misrepresenting myself or people are misinterpreting what I'm saying or something like that. And maybe I'll talk a little bit about capers and heists as well. So I'll take it from a couple different angles. Because, after all, it's a channel about me. And maybe you might relate to some of this stuff. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the game is, what the system is. My preference is to not be boxed in and to have a system or game that allows me to turn on a dime in terms of the character's focus. So to a large degree, I mean, people kind of called me out a little bit, and it's true. Your game experience is always going to be defined by the game you play and the system you play to a certain extent. However, I enjoy playing in a game which allows me to, whether it's via the system or the game itself or via what we agree to as a group, that we can change our focus. So sometimes maybe the game is kind of combat heavy, but we don't always have to do combat. Maybe we can do investigation or adventuring or negotiating or, whatever it happens to be. Some kind of heist or caper. You name it. I like being able to, interact in the game world and find what's interesting. And then we go follow those leads and, engage in those activities. Maybe the game has, or the system has, systems that address those activities. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe we're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. I don't particularly, find that bad. In fact, I like that. It's what I prefer to do because, as a person, I'm not defined just by my skill set, and, like a good friend of mine who's kind of a mentor, has told me several times, and I'm kind of, griping about the job I have and needing to get out of that. He's like, well, Ivan, you got to remember that, your job is simply what you do. It's not who you are. And so, I like a character that's not just defined by a skill set either, whether it's a class and like an umbrella skill set, or whether this all these little splinter skills that you've put together in a skill-based system like something like Ubiquity Games. I prefer to kind of engage in all kinds of things and not be boxed in by the system. So that's one of the things I've been trying to articulate. And so the system really doesn't matter that much. It matters, but in terms of it's got to be this game or that game. But I like a game that kind of informs play, but then gets out of the way. That's kind of what I was getting to. Or getting at. The other thing, it's funny. I watched Robert the narrator's video about one of his top 10 favorite games, and it was about 5th edition D&D, which is cool. But he talked about how he liked that it kept what 4th edition D&D had tried to do, which is kind of make all the classes relevant, equally relevant. And that's something I don't particularly go for. So I'm going to disagree with him on that point. And I had a video a long time ago about game balance in the classes, but that was like a D&D perspective. So I wanted to kind of revisit this topic a little bit because I think you're allowed to revisit a topic after 5 years, even if you made it in a video. And I want to take it from a kind of a generic perspective because this is another, axis, I guess, for lack of a better word, that I like a game to play to involve in my ideal game experience, as I go through a campaign. Because I don't like one-shots and I don't like, a little miniature, let's do 4 sessions. Sometimes you have to do that. But if I want to explore my character, explore the game world, explore the system, explore the game, I like to have time to do that. I find campaigns much more satisfying. So I talked about, before, about the heist or the caper. And what do I mean by that? Think of any kind of story where they did some kind of, could be I think the kind of Bring the Ring to Mordor is a little bit, not the best example, but let's say, Die Hard. Okay, they're the bad guys, and I forget the name of the tower. I should remember it because, Christmas time, but, they try to take over this tower, get in the mainframe, all this kind of stuff. You got a caper in mind. You assemble a team of experts, the party, okay? And so you get your guy that's good at, breaking into the mainframe or doing a little magic-y thing, whatever the game is. The nerdy guy, you've got to get to the place where he can do the thing. You've got a mastermind. You got, somebody's going to plan the whole thing. Maybe you've got your guy like Q in James Bond that makes little nifty devices. Maybe you've got your negotiator. Maybe you got your, whoever's going to talk to the people. Get all the stuff done. The smooth talker. You've got your obligatory guys that can beat people up or shoot them. You got your killers on your team, your hired muscle. You got the getaway car driver maybe. Maybe you got the high wire thief. Somebody can get into all the tight spaces, do the nifty stuff to get to where you want to go, and whatever the thing is he's supposed to do is what I'm trying to say. Maybe you got your Ninja S guy where you got the final security guard that might trip the alarm or whatever, and he jumps from off the ceiling where he's been hiding in this impossible place and kills them. You've got this team of experts. Are they all equally relevant and useful in every single situation? Of course not. They've got these skills to help them out. So, the party, I don't believe party members need to be equally relevant in all situations either. It's not about spotlight time. It's just about, this is the guy that can do the thing, and you assemble a lot of them because nobody's good at everything. Now, this is not to say that, you can't have characters that are broadly skilled, because that's kind of a shtick of, OSR retro clones for sure. The idea that, at a certain level, if you'll permit, or, a competence level, the character's probably competent in a lot of stuff. If you're from a fantasy, era, genre, whatever it is, maybe you know how to ride a horse. That's kind of something that people did back then. You get the idea. People are broadly skilled today. We all know how to use a smartphone, mostly, Anyhow, but does that mean that the other characters of those times have nothing to do? No, that's ridiculous, because, even if you're not very good at something, even if you're not very good at searching, still usually everybody in the whole team is searching. Maybe, the one guy that's really good at it finds it. Maybe sometimes the guy that's not so good at it rolls well and finds it. You get the idea. But, so yeah, those are kind of two different axes, but they really kind of represent, for me, a lot of the gameplay I like. I like us to be able to go ahead and go off in whatever direction we want to, not really be constrained by the system, not really be constrained by our class or our niche skills or whatever. Maybe we're not going to be so great at it, whatever we try to do. But, we're going to play human beings, or a reasonable facsimile of human beings, in this game world, and explore it and do all kinds of stuff. And I don't want to be, don't want to be constrained by a system that tells me, well, this is exactly what you're going to do. Informed, yeah, I get it, that's inevitable. And then the idea that we don't all have to be, equally relevant when it comes time to fight, or equally relevant when it comes to investigate or negotiate or whatever, because that's just silly as well. People bring different stuff to the table, and maybe nobody's really skilled at something, and we just kind of have to improvise. I like that. I like playing real human beings, fictional, in a real fictional game world. So that maybe that nails down a little bit more what I like for a game experience, or I don't know. And maybe you can relate to that sort of thing. So yeah, system matters, but a lot of times I want the system to get out of my freaking way. I want it to be there when I need it, but I don't want it to so completely define what we're doing that it gets in the way. And I don't want it to be ultra fair, if you know what I mean, where it's trying to make us all relevant, or compressing us down to this is the activity. You're going to be a combat game, or this is going to be an investigation game, and therefore you all have to be good at it. So far I'm really kind of liking what I see in Leagues of Adventure. That's kind of a ubiquity power game that kind of is, I don't want to say generic, but the idea that's your globetrotters, your adventurers in Victorian era, England and the other countries that would be relevant to that time. A little bit of steampunk thrown in, so you get the weird science. I dig that because you can go in a ton of different directions and play a ton of different types of people. So that's kind of a neat idea. It's kind of broadened my horizons a little bit. I'm really kind of looking forward to some of the other games that use that system. I'm kind of looking forward to the All for One. Talked about that a bunch. Supposedly my oldest daughter bought it for me for Christmas, and we haven't hooked up yet because she's going up to Maine, so I'm kind of waiting. Otherwise, I'll have to buy it myself. So that's it. Maybe you relate to all this. Maybe this was incredibly boring to you, but that's all I got today. To defy the laws of tradition. I think that's what that was.